Hello and welcome to the Scoreboard Podcast. I'm your host, Rivka Boord of Jets X Factor, bringing you the best New York Jets content on the internet. We are going to be joined by Robby Sabo shortly, but until then, you get a few minutes of solo me. So the first thing I wanted to just reference is an article I wrote earlier this week, or at least that posted earlier this week, about the biggest what-ifs in Jets history. And it seemed to cause some consternation among Jet fans. There was one particular comment about that this is not a good article to read first thing in the morning. But it's June, and there's not much going on. So we're reaching deep into our pockets of the different possibilities of just, Jets history and different things that happen. So I wanted to make reference to that. I know that I had one fan very angry and adamant that the Dan Marino, Ken O'Brien is not a real thing. You look at their championships, you look at anything like that, and there's barely a difference between them. What would have been with O'Brien? I'm sorry, you're talking about a top 10 quarterback all time, maybe top 5. That is definitely a what if question. So we're just going to get that one out of the way. Hey, Connor. Hey, Sean. Hey, Greg. Thanks so much for joining. Again, we're going to have Robby Sabo on with us shortly. I did want to address, all the Hassan Reddick stuff that's been going on. Honestly, I find all these narratives around the Jets to be largely ridiculous. We know what's going to end up happening here. Even if he holds out for a bit of training camp or he does a hold-in or something like that, in the end, what's going to happen is they're going to give him some sort of sweetener of his deal, give him a little bit more guaranteed money, give him some sort of incentives, and he'll be there. He doesn't really have to be in training camp. Yes, he's changing teams. He's a veteran. He's been, this is a guy who was used as an inside linebacker, as an off-ball linebacker for the first few years of his career. He can figure it out. And so the whole thing, he's in Japan, he's here, he's there. Who cares? It's just one of the dumbest narratives I've ever heard. It's, filling up, when you Google New York Jets, every day it's something else about Hassan Reddick, or every day it's something else about someone else blasting Aaron Rodgers for having missed minicamp. It's almost ridiculous at this point. Would it be better as a Jet, especially if you root for the Jets, would it be better to just have Rodgers and Reddick there and not have these stories? But come on, you have players on other teams pulling this shtick all the time. It's really not a big deal. Honestly, I'm thinking of doing an article coming up about all the different people who have ragged on Aaron Rodgers and all the things they've said. It's for clicks, it's clickbait, and it's we could write them every day about another guy rips Aaron Rodgers, and sometimes we do, but it's getting boring at this point. I think with everyone else, I'm just waiting for training camp and hoping to see, something that actually resembles football rather than get to hear the stupid narratives about Rodgers again and again. Again, we're waiting for Robby here, so I don't want to get to, I like to, when I have a guest on, which is usually when I go live, I like to kind of bounce ideas off of them rather than give my own stuff. Maybe if you guys convince me, I'll come on live myself more often. So actually Tyson has a comment here. I don't like Aaron never had best draft was him alone in the draft room while everyone else went ahead. It's a little hard. I guess if you're a college football fan, maybe you hated Rodgers even then, but I think most of his hate is, from recent years, from what happened post-vaccine. I have to say, for the record, I wasn't writing then, but I disliked Rodgers, just for his personality long before anything came out about the media hating him, just because I thought he was a bit of a, he blamed his teammates a lot when look, I saw Tom Brady do it. I saw Manning do it, but I felt like Rodgers was more willing to throw his teammates under the bus rather than saying it's on me, I'm the quarterback. And that used to frustrate me. But still, the vitriol that the media levels towards him, yeah, okay, he can be very cold and he can be very come off as very much like I know better than you. But honestly, we all know that the reason that everyone hates Rodgers is because of is primarily because of the vaccine thing. Yes, again, individual, you say you don't like Rodgers, you never have. But again, all the leveling stuff, again, the accusations against him, okay, it's all clickbait, Nick, as you said. He's a polarizing figure, and it's the offseason. But it's also because it all stems back to the vaccine thing. That's when everyone suddenly started taking off on him. And yeah, there's the political thing, him and RFK Jr. and stuff like that, but it's primarily because of the vaccine. And yeah, again, his arrogance, but he's not the first quarterback to be uber arrogant. There are lots of them out there. Yes, he comes off thinking he's smarter than everyone else. He definitely does. But I don't think that that's why they rip on him so much. I'm sorry. People did not rag on Bill Belichick as much. And if you think Rodgers is cold to the media, sheesh, Bill Belichick. So again, it's just for the story. It's just for the headline. It's become to a point where sometimes I type in New York Jets. I'm curious to see what other outlets are reporting on to see maybe, it'll give me an idea for an article. And it's just over and over again. This guy blasts Aaron Rodgers and that guy. Today I saw one that Sean King, the former nothing quarterback from Tampa and Arizona, when it came out and blasted Rodgers. I mean, how much further do we have to go? Sean King. I don't think too many people even remember Sean King unless they're remembering the game where the Jets came back to win 21-17 in the Keyshawn revenge game. So, it's really just something to report on because there's nothing going on. But again, if you're rooting for the Jets, it's frustrating because you want to see just things go well. Again, Rodgers was at OTAs. It was much nicer to see, Rodgers, great connection with Garrett Wilson, how great they're going to be this year. That was great during OTAs. So to have him miss mandatory minicamp, am I hating? Look, I don't think I'm really hating on Rodgers. I'm just waiting for the real story to come. I'm trying to keep it real over here and saying that a lot of the hate is clickbait, and it comes from the media hatred of Rodgers because of the whole vaccine thing. But ultimately, Rodgers also, he makes it easy. He kind of gives fodder for it. He doesn't try to prevent it. He somewhat likes to stir the pot, I think, Rodgers. And, again, in the New York market, they're going to lap it up and, keep the story alive as long as possible. So I don't think I'm hating on Rodgers, only to the extent that I said that if you asked me who my favorite quarterback to watch was growing up, honestly, Morgan Moses said that Rodgers was Mahomes before Rodgers. And if anyone remembers Rodgers from earlier in his career, it is 100% true. Rodgers was like the Mahomes. He was like, I used to say, I said, I've never seen a quarterback like him. Just the way he could escape the pocket and under pressure and off his back foot and throw a dime across his body. Things like that. There was nothing like it. Go back and watch Rodgers' earlier highlights. He was Mahomes before Mahomes. I don't say he still is Mahomes because he doesn't have the mobility, but Rodgers, in terms of a pure passer of the football, may be the greatest thrower that the NFL has ever seen. I happen to think that Rodgers is borderline top 5 quarterback of all time. You could argue again, depending on where you want to put your criteria. I think, to me, Rodgers how unbelievable he's been, coupled with his ability not to prevent interceptions, is just unbelievable. And so to me, he's a top 5. He's probably around the 5th best quarterback of all time, but he's certainly in the top 10. And so, again, hating on him, whatever you want, you could say whatever you want about him, but you can't deny that the greatness of his play. Again, we're still waiting for Robby Sabo. Hang tight. He'll be with us soon. I would love to hear from the chat what you guys want to talk about, because again, I don't want to spoil some of the stuff that I had planned on asking Robby, because I feel like he was there at OTAs, so he gets Robby really has the insider. Robby also has a very unique take on the Jets. He really, more than anyone else, when he watches a play, he doesn't watch it as a fan, he watches it more as a coach. And so he'll see, the nuances of the play. And that's why I don't want to mess it up by going into some of my topics here. So you said, do we really think Hassan will be game ready if a new contract isn't done that gives him more opportunity with snaps? To be honest, I'm pretty sure I heard somewhere that Reddick had missed minicamp with the Eagles at least once. Look, if he misses the whole training camp, maybe I would be concerned, because yes, I think Nick Bosa was rusty when he missed time, and I think we've seen players be rusty when they miss time. I don't think Reddick is going to hold out of training camp. I think the worst he'll hold in, to be honest, I just think that he when the Jets traded John Franklin Myers, when they originally traded for Reddick, he's like, well, he had no leverage because they had 2 other starting edge rushers. So the Jets would have just gone with JJ and JFM as their edge rushers. But now once they traded JFM, he's like, oh, wait, now you guys really need me. So now he changed his mind and decided to try to hold out for more money. That's the way I see it. I think it will be resolved. I think, again, all his being cryptic and whatever, I think he'll be fine. So, but again, yes, if he does like start holding out and it goes longer, I would be concerned about him getting into shape. Okay, let's see who else. Yeah, so Hassan will be ready come game time. Robby's still spiking up his hair. No, Robby does a very good job keeping his hair in perfect, perfect condition without having to retouch it. Yes, I do. So let me add you to the stage. Okay. Fine. Thank you very much. Hi, Robby. Thank you for
spiking up my hair. What do these people think I do my hair or something? Listen, folks, I take a shower. I get out, and my hair job is towel on the head, dry to completion. That's it. There's nothing else. If I'm not wearing a hat, it's dangerous times.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Robby. I really didn't want to get, whenever I have you on, I like to prepare, let's say, the different questions to ask you that you give a unique perspective on, especially having been there at OTAs, kind of, and I feel like, let's say, like even, me, Michael, Joe, when we watch the Jets play, we watch it as a fan, and then we go back later and we watch it as an analyst. When you watch the Jets play, you have your coach mind on like the whole time. I think that's the impression I get. And so you'll be able to give us more real-time impressions.
Yeah, I think that's true. It'll be a test if they're really good this year. Since I've been covering them, they haven't been good. So, I mean, I haven't been tested in terms of my fandom when I was growing up when I was a kid, but I think that's true, especially because I coach today.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to start out just, talking about OTAs. Let's say, what was there anything in particular that surprised you that you saw that like you're like, oh, I wasn't expecting that?
Valladay, the running back Valladay, getting some work with the big boys, which is interesting. I know Brees isn't participating in teams or 7-on-7s. You got Braylon Allen, Isaiah Davis playing very well. Valladay getting sprinkled in, so maybe they like something with him. It could be nothing. Really could be nothing. Two really great positives. There's more than two, but I'll go with two right now. Xavier Gipson, how he has jumped from year one to year two in terms of feel of the offense, understanding what he's looking at, leverage wise and coverage wise defensively, and being in sync with Rodgers. We take it for granted how receivers and quarterbacks have to be in sync and together. My dog's losing her mind. And it's not easy. So Gipson, what he did this spring in terms of being in sync with Rodgers, really big. Allen and Isaiah Davis added the backfield as receivers. Another really great surprise. Defensively, I'll go with Stiggers. Stiggers is playing pretty well for a number two or second team cornerback right now.
Yeah, and that you led me into some of the questions I was going to ask you specifically. So when you say Gipson, you said that he had better, his route running improved a lot. Look, I did a review at the end of last season of Gipson, and all I saw was pretty much speed releases, kind of no real nuance to his route running at all. When you talk about how he improved, are you talking about more finding holes in his zone? You were talking about more just being in sync with Rodgers, or you were talking about like more releasing off the line and things like that?
Nah, no release. Not about the release. It's about running a certain concept against a zone. And it could be man too, but mainly against zone and finding the open space within that defense. It's tough to truly evaluate it without replay at camp, not camp, but OTAs and mini camp, because you really have to be locked in. And if you're not locked in, you're not going to get a sense. But when I'm locked in on him and he's running reps, team or 7-on-7, and it's a zone call, he is finding open spots. And Rodgers is Rodgers, but Gipson is doing stuff Lazard's not. He's doing stuff that other guys aren't either when they're rotating in with the first team. So releases, that physical stuff, he's not, Gipson is who he is. He's not going to be a dominant guy in that regard. He's a little shifty guy. And in today's NFL, that could work big time. But it's more so reading the defense and reacting in real time from year one to year two. That for a receiver, that's the biggest chance of a jump. and Gibson has shocked me in a pretty positive way so far.
Yeah, and I would say, I mean, that ability to find the hole in the zone was basically what a lot of what the Jets were lacking when Garrett wasn't in the slot last year. I mean, they just didn't have that guy, that shifty slot receiver who's a pain in the backside for defenses, and like we'll just get those first downs, those yards, and again, the guy could average under 10 yards per reception, but he's just annoying and pesky, and that sounds like what you're describing with Gibson.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, he's a little guy, perfect scenario. You don't want a little guy if Garrett's going to play the slot a lot, but hey, Tyreek Hill. I mean, Chiefs have gone without any big receivers in the past. I mean, I know they tried to solve that with Rice and Tony before that. Tony didn't work out, and I know they have Kelsey, granted, but they won a Super Bowl, their first one, with all little guys. It's not the same NFL it used to be. So there's a world where Gibson, Garrett Wilson, and Mike Williams are the three receivers starting in week 1. That's not to say Corley's not going to get his snaps. He will. He'll be in there a lot. But I could see a scenario where that happens.
Okay. I mean, I guess some Jet fans that will kind of upset them because you think you traded up for a receiver at the beginning of the 3rd round and you're so excited about this yak dude. And then
he's a rookie.
UDFA.
He's a rookie, guys. He's a rookie. And if you're playing receiver and if you're coming out of Western Kentucky, your route tree is not going to be expansive. Like the coverages you're seeing in college, if you're not in the SEC, if you're not in the Big 10, and Big 12 to a degree, but Big 12 is air raid. I mean, and their coverages are really basic. So if you're not in one of those upper echelon situations, quarterback, receiver, learning the big boy stuff at the NFL level is very difficult. And Corley has an uphill climb. That's not to say he can't do it. Of course he can, and he's going to get his touches. I mean, there's no question about that. But in terms of being trusted to be plugged into the scheme and the offense and knowing what you're doing and feel comfortable with that as a quarterback and an offense, this summer is going to be big for him. And if he's not there quite yet and Gibson's still ahead of him, hey, it's no big deal. I mean, I see him getting there eventually. So it's nothing to be alarmed at. I saw Twitter, people losing their minds when I said Gibson's the number 3 right now. But hey, that's par for the course. It's 3rd round, mid-round receiver, 2nd, 3rd round. The nightmares of Devin Smith, Stephen Hill come up, and I get it.
Yeah. No, okay. That's fair enough. I mean, because when I saw it initially, I was like, oh my gosh, this is the guy who I wrote shouldn't be their number 6 next year. And then you're saying that he's their starter. It's like, okay. But if you're saying that he really has improved in that area, then that's more legitimate than,
listen, it's
putting him there by default.
It's the guys who are going to play are the guys who work best with Rodgers, period.
Okay. Fair enough.
And Green Bay, some of their receivers they had who had big years, and they weren't all that talented. I mean, a lot of them weren't all that talented. And Gibson has a little something special. He doesn't have the size, which sucks, but he's got a lot of things. I think people are sleeping on him. And if anything, I don't know how anyone can get angry at this news because it is the greatest positive in the world if Gibson is flashing like this and he's stomping out Lazard in terms of production in minicamp in OTA.
Yeah, so and you led me to another question just about Lazard. Obviously, you wrote, all the other beat reporters wrote how Lazard had, a rough OTAs, certainly. What do you think his role is going to be this year, realistically speaking, considering that he has the relationship with Rodgers, but also considering Rodgers', perfectionist tendencies?
I think Lazard will get snaps, but I think he's more Mike Williams in insurance. Mike Williams, he's injured. Nothing's guaranteed. I think he'll be ready for week 1, but he's Mike Williams insurance number 1. And, don't shoot me, but there's a chance where you see that starting lineup. I know I just said Gibson, but there's a chance where it's Lazard, Williams, and Garrett starters in the 11 personnel. That's not to say he's going to get more snaps than Gibson or Corley or whomever, but he'll be amongst the rotation for sure. I don't see a world where that doesn't happen. But to me, he's clearly number 5. I mean, there's no way around it. Maybe number 6 if Irv Charles accelerates this offseason, but I think Irv is really focused with Boyer on the special team side.
Now, moving to the defensive side a little bit, you mentioned Stiggers. And Stiggers was very interesting because, I came in thinking, okay, he's going to be CB5, and then he'll play specialty, or he'll be CB6, sorry, because Isaiah Oliver, and then he'll play special teams. Then Blewett came out and said the guy can't tackle. And if he can't tackle, he's definitely not playing special teams. Do you think right now, if they're moving Oliver to safety, that Stiggers is taking the Bryce Hall role of cornerback 5, and he's the guy, again, if Eccles is hurt, he goes up to CB4?
I think it's yet to be determined. It's without it being live, the good thing for Stiggers is the CBA, the way it is, and you never go live in the summer. Even in camp, when it's live, it's not really live. So his lack of tackling is not really going to hurt him in terms of making the team, which I think he's a lock. Even though, late draft pick really shouldn't be a lock. We saw Kuntz last year. And Jets fans, off the topic, they lose their minds. They lose their minds when I say Yabo was playing well and outplaying Kuntz. Like Kuntz is, the second coming and the next guy. Guys, there's not much difference between a 7th rounder and an undrafted guy, and that's what we have with Kuntz and Yeboah. But with Stiggers, yet to be determined. He's really aggressive. He's hands-on. He's not going to get the calls like Sauce does. Sauce gets away with it because he's crafty. Stiggers, I think that'll be his big problem. Tackling remains to be seen. We'll see. I think Oliver at safety. Oliver is that guy where he's the 4th corner and he's the 3rd safety. I don't think he'll start, not even at safety, because I think they're going to work in Chuck Clark and want a true center fielder. But he's a hell of a guy to have. He could play backup slot, outside corner, safety. So I kind of shoehorn in Oliver as the 3rd safety, the backup pretty much everywhere in the secondary. And then you got Eccles and Stiggers behind that.
Okay, so you see Eccles is behind Oliver, that Oliver is okay, interesting.
Well, I mean, listen, if it depends on the situation, right? If Sauce gets hurt, what are you going to do? Like in the game, if Sauce or Reed gets hurt, what are you going to do? And if you have Chuck Clark and Adams playing safety, Adams is a man coverage guy. He could bump down to the slot. He could do a lot of things that raises their ceiling. And if Chuck Clark's doing it from center field, if you need a boundary safety, do you go to Oliver? Probably not. You might want to go to Eccles or Stiggers. But every other spot, I think Oliver's the number 2.
Okay. Interesting. And now someone asked about safety over here over Ashton, meaning do you think Oliver is the 3rd safety over Ashton?
It's a work in progress still. I think Oliver, they're working in Oliver and JBC, by the way, who played both corner and safety in college, was safety last year, and now he's getting a lot of reps at corner. So it's kind of like Oliver and JBC switched. Let's not forget about JBC too. He's made a couple plays in camp, not camp, but mini camp and OTAs. Ashton, I see Oliver as Tony Adams's clone, his backup, in terms of shadowing him, in terms of the type of safety. On paper, it's free safety, but in reality, it's more of a strong safety, a man-to-man strong safety, where you drop him down, you have him bluff blitz or add to the pressure, or take the tight end and man coverage, or take the running back first to flat, those types of situations. And it makes a lot of sense because Adams used to be a corner. Oliver's a corner who's playing safety. So I think Oliver and Adams are one safety, that man coverage guy, and then Ashton and Chuck Clark is the other safety duo, where they're the more traditional safety, the center fielder type.
So that kind of scares me a little bit for 2 reasons. Number one, Chuck Clark's best performances were usually in the box. Like he's more of an authentic, box safety. He did a pretty decent job covering tight ends out of, in the slot. But then a lot of, again, I mean, his worst coverage place was like in the too high in a cover 2. But he's also more of the like downhill, like the Ravens used him in big nickel as like the sub line, instead of the linebacker when Hamilton was a rookie. And then Ashton Davis is even more so like that. Ashton Davis last year, they used him almost exclusively in the box. And whenever you saw him deep, it was like, yeesh, what is going to happen here?
Well, think back to last year. Where did you see Jordan Whitehead most?
As a single eye, or
Yes.
as a yeah.
Yes.
And
And
I
why
hated
is
it.
that? Why is that? Because Tony Adams is playing around in the box, playing around in man-to-man coverage. Of course, Tony Adams played high too. They don't do the traditional free safety, strong safety thing. To Adams will be the free safety on paper, but Adams, that's the versatile guy, the rover, where they're going to use him in a lot of situations. They're going to use him to their advantage for matchups because it's very hard to get a safety who could play man to man. And in this league, you need that over hard hitters. Um, so what do? Do you call Adams your strong safety and then get a free safety type? That'll be two smaller-ish guys. Your tackling might go downhill a little bit. So they go the other way where they try to get a Whitehead or a Clark or Ashton Davis in that role. Call him the strong safety, but he's really not. He's kind of a playoff to that man coverage safety. So it's a intricate setup they have, and the reason it works is because Sauce and Reed lock down their third and their quarter. That's the reason it works. They don't need a traditional center fielder who can go sideline to sideline. It would be nice to have, but they'd rather have that guy be a more balanced guy who could make a tackle, who could play linebacker and throw Adams deep if you want to. So I think that's their thinking.
Interesting. I mean, we'll see. We'll see how it plays out. Again, hearing this, a lot of Jets fans would say, why don't you go out and sign Justin Simmons? Or why don't you go out and sign Quandre Diggs? Because those are two more traditional center fielders.
Yes.
So, again, the people be like, just as insurance, look, I like Chuck Clark, but I don't see him as a kind of a deep middle kind of guy.
No, I didn't see Whitehead as that either. But
and he wasn't. I mean, that's why he gave up 7 touchdowns last year.
I know, but this is what.
But the defense worked.
All I could do is report what their scheme is and what they're doing, and this is their scheme. And maybe they change it up a little bit more this year and have Adams a little deeper. But what do you want? You want to put Clark in man-to-man coverage and put Adams deep? No, you don't want that either. So it works off of Adams. That's basically how it works. And Gardner and Reed being the guys that they are, that's what gives them the versatility with safety. And, if they signed the Denver kid, Simmons, I'd be ecstatic, of course.
I don't think that's happening.
No, I don't either. But, yeah, I mean, it is what it is. We'll see. It's, and who knows? Maybe they play more of a traditional type role with the safeties. It remains to be seen. I just know this. They love Adams because of the ceiling. The fact that he's so versatile, that he could play man coverage, allows them to do a lot of different things.
For sure. So we have Rob asked, where's JBC fitting in then? And you mentioned something about how moving Oliver to safety and having JBC get reps at corner might not be so great for JBC's, bode well so well for him making the roster.
Yeah, it's I don't think it's a great sign, but he's right on the bubble. I mean, how many guys do you keep? You keep 4 safeties, most likely. I remember a year they kept 3, but it quickly changed to 4, I think in week 2 or week 3. So you get the 4 safeties. We know who they are: Adams, Clark, Davis, and who am I forgetting? Oliver.
I'm saying Oliver. Yeah, so that's the question. Are they using Oliver as one of the safeties?
Yes.
Because then it seems like JBC really is the odd man out, because when Blewett did the review of him last year, it was primarily at corner, and he said he doesn't have the athleticism to play corner.
Well, so Oliver as I'll call him the third safety, but whatever. You got the 4. Then you got Sauce, Reed, Michael Carter, who's top 3 slot corner in the business, in my opinion. Eccles, Stiggers, and JBC, and there's 10 right there. So that's not out of the realm of possibility that you have 10. 4 safeties, 6 corners, could be 5 corners, and then JBC and Stiggers are battling it out.
Yeah, no. So the way I saw it is when Oliver was as a corner, I was like, I thought Stiggers would make the roster because they just seemed to like him, and I figured JBC would be the 4th safety. But I don't see them keeping 10, but maybe. I mean, and that kind of sort of segues to just another question I was going to ask you on the defensive line, specifically, really both the edge and defensive tackle. Who do you think, because there was talk that Michael Clemens could be on the odd man out. Then once they got rid of JFM, it's like, who's their run stuffing edge, bigger run stuffing edge. But then you have Eric Watts, who's 6'5", 277 or something like that, who's looking pretty good. It's not like Clemens had a great year last year or anything. Who do you see making it, both on the edge, like of those UDFAs or just in general? Do you think Clemens' spot is a little insecure? Or you think he's a lock and it's just one of those UDFAs? Do you think it's none of them? How many defensive linemen do they keep?
I wouldn't say Clemens is a lock, but I'd be shocked if he doesn't make it. And listen, he's stiff. He's stiff. He's kind of out of place. They try to shoehorn him in on special teams. I don't like that, but they're a little thinner at D line than people think. I believe, and I also believe the D line's a bit too celebrated because I think the secondary really bumps them up as opposed to the other way around. McGregor and Leonard Taylor, they both have real good chances. You mentioned Watts, but Reddick. I mean, Reddick has to be there. If Reddick's not there, it's a nightmare. Think about it. What is your D line if Reddick's not there?
It's a mess. I mean, you have McDonald starting on the edge, and then you have Clemens as your backup, and then two UDFAs.
You can't play McDonald in base. Can't do it. That's the problem. McDonald, you can call him a starter. That's fine, but nickel and dime sub package starter. I do not feel comfortable with him starting in base. So I immediately disclude him. And then you got Reddick, JJ, Quinnen, and then whoever the 2I tech is, which is, I guess, Kinlaw right now, or Leaky.
Well, I mean, in base, it's Fotu.
They'll always be rotating.
Yeah.
They'll always be rotating.
But I mean, between the two, they see him as he's going to play more 0 or 1 even.
Fotu will be the number one goal line short yardage guy. But I think it's straight base. I think it'll be Kinlaw and Quinnen. And then Fotu and Solomon as the two backups in the rotation. And then I could be wrong, but I think that's the way I see it. And then it's Reddick and JJ on the outside. And then backing them up are Clemens, McDonald, and then the other three outside of those top 8. And they usually keep 10 D linemen, maybe 9. I think 11 one year. It is what? Watts, McGregor, and Taylor. Did I forget anybody out of that?
No. So that would be 11. If they kept all of them, it would be 11. Yeah. I guess that's my question also about Taylor. I know Taylor wasn't a great run defender in college, but they also kept him at like 0 and 1 tech, and he almost never played 3. Do you think Taylor has any chance of not only making the roster, but like actually carving out a little bit of a role for himself? Or you think he'll be that guy who's inactive on game day, but they're keeping him?
I think he has a chance because he has a lot of talent. He really does. I mean, the only reason he didn't get drafted where people thought he would was due to non-football stuff. I don't know exactly what the story was, but that's what I keep hearing from everybody. Let's not forget about Tack McKinley too, by the way. Tack McKinley's now in the fold, and another guy with a lot of talent. It's been a long time now since he was a first rounder, 2017. Jalen Holmes as well, I'm starting to look at the depth chart on JetX. Jalen Holmes is getting a look. I've seen him mixed in there because the starting D line hasn't been there all spring. So they're really just throwing guys out there.
I mean, I think Holmes is a practice squad guy, but
I do too. Yeah. But where they have him placed in their rotation is eyebrow raising. Is my point.
I mean, he played at the end of the season last year. I think even he took some reps once Quentin Jefferson got hurt.
Yes, and without JJ and Quinnen and I think Quinnen and Kinlaw showed up for minicamp, but for OTAs, the whole starting line wasn't there, and it was a rotation of these guys: Clemens, Holmes, McDonald, McGregor, Taylor. So it's a giant mess right now. I mean, mess not necessarily meaning bad. They could be a good unit, especially if Jermaine Johnson takes another step and Hassan Reddick all is well there, which I think it will be. I think the underrated thing right now is base is I worry about the run D. That's questionable, but I think in sub package, I think they're fine because I think JJ is going to play some D tackle in sub package. So we'll have McDonald and Reddick on the edge with JJ and Quinnen on the inside, and that'll work. It won't be automatic. You don't want to put JJ there too much. He did some interior stuff last year, standing up mainly as a linebacker, like a B gap show or an A gap show. But I think based on what I've seen, I think that's going to be a package this year.
Interesting. And now you led me into my next question just about Javon Kinlaw.
Yeah.
Why do you think the Jets gave him way more money than anyone ever thought he was going to get? And do you think the Jets are getting a little bit cocky and thinking that they can just shift out talent and sign kind of any jag and get them and still get the same results out of their D line?
Where did Quentin Jefferson go, by the way? I don't even remember.
Cleveland, 1 year, $4 million. And he said basically he ended up he spoke to the Jets, but they didn't pick up the phone or they didn't call him back in time or something like that.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't even given it much thought, to be honest. But it is interesting. Another beat writer who I talked to, I won't name names, is on Saleh in that mold, how you just laid it out, where they trust guys too much without the show me aspect first, like a Michael Clemens, for example. What has he ever done? Why do they love this guy so much? And maybe Kinlaw is the next in line there. I know Nathan Shepard was that guy before Kinlaw. So I don't know. It seems to be a rotating carousel with these interior guys. And I get it with the salary cap. You don't want to go crazy, but with Kinlaw, that's that reverses course totally with the money they gave him. So
7.25 for a guy who had one decent year and can't stop the run versus a guy who's one of the best, down over down interior pass rushers in the league who got almost half, like a little more than half that.
Who are you talking about, Quentin?
Quentin. Literally, statistically speaking, if you watch him, you see it. He's been for the last 4 years, just one of the better. Again, he doesn't get a lot of money because he can't stop the run to save his life. But still, as a pass rushing specialist, he's one of the best.
Yes, and that's the thing. An underrated aspect, which I haven't seen written too much. I touched on it a couple times. The Jets identified their biggest problem from last year and tried to solve it full force. In that problem is they were wimps. They got pushed around. They got bullied. Offensive line, defensive line. Forget the sacks. Forget the pass rush. They got steamrolled, bullied. That was the scuttlebutt around the league. Hey, playing the Jets? Okay, let's just bully them. Let's just get our pad level down and knock them over. And I think Jefferson, unfortunately, fit into that because of the rush D. And, I know the numbers don't look bad with the rush D last year, but I think a lot of it has to do with the situation. It was a conservative game plan every game with Zach Wilson and the terrible offense. And the opposition's going to just laugh at the Jets offense and say, we don't need to score points. Let's just run the ball and get the hell out of here. So when you expect run as a defense, you're going to stop it a little easier when it's 50-50 and you have to guess run or pass. So I think, unfortunately, Jefferson fit in that mold in terms of them trying to get nastier in the trenches at the point of attack. Does Kinlaw fit that mold? Yeah, you could argue either way.
Not from Joe's review, and Fotu even worse. I mean, Fotu gets moved a lot for a guy who's 30 pounds.
Fotu will be interesting because of the scheme. That's one thing, and I'll be nice and say we could argue either way, but I hear you. I'll say this. They solved their issue in terms of getting bullied on offense. Simpson, Moses, Tyron, they got mean. They got bigger. I don't count Becton. Becton's a big body, but he wasn't mean. But at defense, we'll see. I tweeted it a couple weeks ago. I'm nervous about the interior run day.
I mean, and to take it a step further, again, instead of signing Fotu, there were so many other guys available for just the same price, like $2.5 million, who aren't anything special, but they're decent run defenders. They don't get they don't get moved as easily. Again, a guy like an Al Woods, or, again, I looked at some of them. I mean, Cleveland re-signed Shelby Harris. Again, I think he's more of a pass rusher than a run stopper, but he's decent. I think he got $3 million again. Michael had written an article about like Armon Watts from Pittsburgh. I think the Patriots signed it. I mean, again, nothing special, but just doesn't. And then you watch Fotu, and it's like, if they're going to spend $2.5 million, why'd they get this guy?
I haven't seen Blewett's review on Fotu or Kinlaw yet. I'm just guessing here, but does he have a quick get off? Because
he actually. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay, because if he does, it's different with Bowles in the 3-4. That's where he was last year, right? Tampa?
No, he was
Arizona, right?
But I think they also play a 3-4. No?
Yeah, Arizona.
Yeah.
It's different as opposed to a quick get off in the attacking 4-3, and so that's a possibility where they could have struck gold, because the get off is just you attack the 4-3, you attack the gaps, as opposed to two gapping it at times in a 3-4 as a D tackle. I'm not saying it's going to be gold with him, but that's got to be their mindset, I'm thinking. And
so it's funny you just said that. So I'm going to look and read his strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah.
One of the weaknesses Blewett lists not explosive off the snap. Feel he can be.
Speed, does he specify speed or strength, or just
I think he definitely said he's pretty fast. But he just said he's not explosive off the snap, and you definitely saw times where he was a little late in his review. But he put, let's see, his strengths. He's athletic for his size. He plays with good straight line speed, lateral movement. So he definitely has some of that. But you were saying that
they're trying they're trying to plug in the athletic sideline to sideline 3-4 D tackle, and no one sees it with him because he really hasn't played that system yet. So I mean, I'm trying to put my mind in the mind of the front office, and that's the only thing I can come up with right now.
Yeah, so that's one of the types of things that I bring you on for, because I feel like that's something that other people wouldn't have come up with.
Yeah, for sure. And listen, I coach defense as well as a coach, so that's, if I'm thinking about it and looking at it without seeing Blewett's review and knowing what I know about Fotu, I know it's not impressive, but it's got to be that. It's got to be that they think he's incredibly athletic for his size, and he's the Al Woods replacement. And the best I could say is kudos to the Jets and Saleh for signing Al Woods last offseason, because once I saw that signing, I said to myself, I don't care if it works. It's a great sign that they signed him, because it's the first D tackle signing that clashes with their system, with their scheme. Before that, they were so hard-headed, I felt like. Rankins, Quinn, and I know Rankins had a good year his last year with the Jets, but it was that classic 3-tech who was all agile, all speed, and no contrasting attributes that you need when you got to really muck it up in the run on 3rd and 1 and 3rd and short and that stuff. And Al Woods kind of broke that loose, and I think Fotu follows that up. But does it work out? We'll see. We'll see this summer.
I want to shift back to the offense again. I have 2 more questions, and then we'll start getting to the comments. First of all, you mentioned Mike Williams in passing. I feel like Mike Williams might be the biggest key to just how the Jets offense is going to unfold this year, obviously after Rodgers. Because if Mike Williams is healthy and still playing like Mike Williams has, they have a great 1-2 punch, and then everything else can kind of be gravy. Again, you have Brees, you have Conklin, you have Gibson, Corley, you can kind of base everything off that. But if Mike Williams is hurt, gets off to a slow start, is just not explosive anymore, and guys like that, the guys who are contested catch guys, tend to fall off very precipitously. Unlike the speed guys, you'd think it'd be the other way around. That the guy
precipitously. Did you just drop precipitously?
Yes, I did.
That's not bad. Okay, sorry. You're on a roll there. Go keep going.
I actually wrote that down in my notes. but they tend to fall off like very sharply. Unlike, let's say, you would think that the speed guys, right, as they get older, that when the speed, they lose the speed,
Yeah.
then they won't be able to. But actually, it's the guys who are kind of the possession type receivers, or the big contested cat who make their living off out jumping, or kind of body control and things like that. That's what tends to fall off faster. And so, what do you think? What are you expecting from Mike Williams? What do you think are realistic expectations? And do those expectations match what his importance will be for the Jets offense?
Yeah, I think the way you're looking at it with importance, I think you're spot on. My expectations for him right now are not high. The only thing I want to see out of him is a return to form. That's it. That injury is no joke. He's not going yet. He's not doing much. He spoke to the media on the last day of minicamp with his beanie on, and you could tell with what he said, they're taking it very cautiously, and he's sticking to the rehab program that they've given him, and he's chomping at the bit, but they're taking it cautiously. So I need to see him return to form. Number one, could there be a drop off? Yeah, for sure. I mean, he's at that age where it could happen, and he's no Cal Ripken himself. He's been injured. He's missed games. But the silver lining is this: if you're going to find a situation where a guy like Mike Williams, a high point red zone possession guy, will be fine, it's Aaron Rodgers, because he places it exactly where he wants to. And having that bigger body to box out guys and get positioning in the red zone, that's the guy. And you want Rodgers to be your quarterback. So as long as he can return to form, I'm not too worried about his production.
And when you mentioned go on a slow projection, I mean, kind of they're taking it slowly. If you think about it, they said he's on Brees's timeline. Brees got hurt in week 7 of the 2022 season, and he wasn't ready for training camp. But they kind of slow played him until through week 3 or 4, and then they took the training wheels off. Mike Williams got hurt in week 3 last year, so technically he should. I mean, I don't know when he had his surgery exactly, but technically he should be a month ahead of Brees, and yet they have him on the same exact timeline. I kind of wondered about that. Like, are they just taking it extra cautious, or do you think that the injury was worse or something like that?
I think he can be. Well, it's different when you're signing a free agent too. That's one thing, because you don't know what they talked about, agreed to. The two sides don't know each other too well yet. And with Brees, they had the year prior. So, I know Brees didn't have a lot of time with them, but still, it's a little different. Number one. Number two, you don't know. He could shock us in July. He could shock us in early August. We don't know where he's at. And maybe he does shock us and he's looking good in August at some point. And I'm hoping that's the case.
Okay. That's fair. Now, again, my last question, just before we get to some of the comments, and I might come back with sprinkle and some more.
Mm-hmm.
You did the breakdown on Rodgers' play where he got hurt, right? And you had said before a bunch of times, the juices were flowing and he's trying to make a play. You said he was trying to get Uzama on the over. Even though he kind of forgot that they were cut blocking. I think it crossed
his mind, yeah.
And kind of just brain fart, forgot that they were cut blocking, wanted to make it go.
Yeah.
Are you concerned at all? You've said that you're more concerned about Rodgers getting injured than you are about his performance dropping off. Are you concerned that Rodgers is going to try again, because this is very Rodgers-like? He likes to move around in the pocket. Are you concerned that he's going to hurt himself again by trying to move around and make a play?
No, I'm not gravely concerned he's going to hurt himself again. No, but gun to my head, if I had to choose one, Rodgers' production falling off and him getting hurt, I'm taking getting hurt, because I've seen him throw the ball. I've seen him move. He's fine. But no, am I gravely concerned about him getting hurt? No. The Achilles is a freak injury. It's got to be the perfect circumstance for it to snap. And remember, he came into week 1 and we didn't know that. I mean, we knew this, but we didn't know it. We weren't thinking about it. He came into week 1 hurt. He hurt that calf in OTAs. On the first OTA, the media was there. It was incredible. The bad luck with the Jets, the dark cloud over the organization. So as long as that strength is there and there's no, injuries in July and August, which there shouldn't be. I mean, he should wear a pink jersey to make sure no one touches him. God, if anyone touches him, they'll send that guy so far out of Florham Park so quickly. I don't even know. The guy won't know what hit him. But Rivka, don't worry about it. I don't think any Jets fan should be gravely panicked about him getting injured. but he will try to make plays, no question. That's number one. Number two, he learns from his mistakes. He's a smart dude, and he understands that the juices were flowing, the American flag. He was trying to make a play, and he even knows he got away with it earlier in that drive, even though that was just the fourth snap. When he flushed to the right, got away from the sack, and threw the ball away. So I think he'll be, as the kids say, zen coming into week 1 this year.
I guess one last thing to throw in. How concerned are you about the fact that he missed OTAs? I mean, he missed minicamp.
Minicamp, 0. I mean, people don't, this didn't come up at all, but OTAs, not every team is like this, but OTAs for the Jets are just as hard as minicamp. Everyone just makes a big deal out of mandatory minicamp. Those 2 days, supposed to be 3, they canceled the last one. Those 2 days because of the words mandatory minicamp. But the OTAs, how long did they go on for OTAs? A month, basically. It was just as hard. So if you look at it from that scope, Rodgers was there for 2+ months practicing, and he just missed the last 2 practices. It's ridiculous. I mean, okay, I'll say this. It's not nothing. Him missing mandatory minicamp is not nothing, especially with the words he said last year about doing things the right way and changing the organization. So it's not nothing. He deserves criticism, but let's let the criticism equal the crime. Let's not go crazy.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with that one. We were talking about that a little bit before you came on. Okay. So we have one super chat. Robby, I met Wayne at the supermarket Friday in upstate New York. Please tell him how thankful we all were.
What was it? Please tell us what?
Please tell him how thankful we all were. This is from South End Auto Dealing, $5 super chat. Thank you for the super chat.
Yeah, I tweeted that. I retweeted that tweet he put out. I guess it was a new price chopper going up somewhere, but I am hoping to do a show with him Tuesday night. I still got to see. Our schedules have been conflicting recently.
You're scheduled to go on with Blewett tomorrow, right? I always try to stagger it so that I'm not doing it at the same time. But
I'm getting hammered, Rivka. I'm getting hammered after putting the app through. I'm just getting hammered. So yeah, Blewett tomorrow at noon, and then Corbett hopefully Tuesday night, but we'll see. But yes, whoever commented, I'll let them know.
Okay, so let's see. Well, I'm going back to where I get some people commenting. I love to see a woman talking about sports. I have to say it's a beautiful sight. Yeah, there aren't too many, especially in the analytics world. Then it's like if you're in analytics, like I'm on some of the Discord groups for like the people who work with NFL analytics. There's like no women there, like 0. Although Cynthia Freeland does for NFL.com. So yeah. There's that.
I second that notion. It's a good thing.
Yeah, it's fun. Let's see over here. Someone said, "Hi, Robby, awesome hair."
I know that's not sarcastic, so thank you. That gave me a boost. That gave me a boost to officially end my week and then start my week tomorrow. Thank you.
Yeah, so this one, Gibson going to make an impact for this team, I believe, as a receiver, deep threat too. Do you see any sign that he can be a deep threat? Because he's teeny. His arm length is like, I mean, if anything, Blewett in his Corley review was showing how Corley occasionally can actually get deep more than people talked about. But Gibson, I mean, I think his arms are like in the first percentile for receivers.
I think Gibson and Corley are kind of similar in that regard in terms of a vertical concept. Corley, he's not a burner. He's not a straight line burner. He's longer than Gibson for sure. But Gibson's hips, he could change on a dime. Mm-hmm. And
that's why it's short area of the field, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. But it also helps. It also helps vertical, especially if you're talking overs and posts and corners and stuff, backside stuff, especially. And he ripped off a few chunks with Rodgers. Mm-hmm. Even Tyrod Taylor on one play in OTAs and minicamp. So. I would never call him a classic deep threat, but I think he can contribute.
Okay. Let's see. Trade Lazard for a broken washing machine, can do more with it. I mean, it's kind of what you said before, though, because if Williams is out, Lazard is going to be that, for sure, the Z.
Yeah. Yeah, now you got to keep Lazard with the money contractually.
I
The
mean, you're
way,
going to pay more if you cut him.
yeah, they had a certain to June 1st, right? If
Well,
they
no,
cut
I
him,
think if they cut him post June 1st, some of the money goes to next year. It spreads over 2 years, but it's still they don't save any money by cutting him. Meaning they're
okay,
just going to. He would count 12.1 against the camp regardless. So I mean, look, if you could trade, even trading him though, that's the thing. Kind of what you were saying with Mike Williams, we don't know about him as much as Lazard might be the 5. They need to have that big body there.
it matters. I think I said this at the top. We underrate. We think of it as a video game world, just plug and play, just get this guy and that guy. We think of it as a fantasy world. It doesn't work that way. You got to have guys that work well with the quarterback, that fit that mindset, that fit the scheme. And what's the Jet scheme? It's Rodgers. It's Rodgers at the line. And Lazard fits him like a glove. And Gibson's been fitting him this spring. So I think once Corley gets up to speed on that, they're going to have a pretty solid group there.
This one says Lazard can get 303. We all just hate just to hate. We have to find a weak link and someone to complain about. Lazard is our 4. Let it go. I mean, I think Jet fans would feel a little bit more comfortable if Mike Williams wasn't injured and wasn't coming off a torn ACL. The problem is if Mike Williams wasn't coming off a torn ACL, he wouldn't be on the Jets. So,
who, Lazard?
They're saying Lazard, is the number 4. But I think, he's saying haters just love to hate. I'm like, I think the reason people are so concerned about Lazard is because they're worried that he's going to end up being a starter. Again, if Lazard is your number 4 receiver, you're fine. But if Lazard ends up being your 2 or your 3, pretty big trouble.
I mean,
that can't catch.
With Zach Wilson, yes. With Rodgers,
look, he was wildly inefficient even in 2022 with Rodgers.
This offense is going to be a rushing offense. Get ready. They are going to run the ball.
Nothing signals that like taking 2 running backs in back-to-back rounds when you have Breece Hall on your team.
And the offensive line, they are going to run the crap out of the ball. So we might be looking at it all wrong with 3 receivers as start. I mean, listen, 11 personnel rules a roost. It always will. Not always will, but in today's modern league, it does. Yeah, listen, I'm not happy with Lazard. It reminds me of 2 years ago when the young Jets started 5-2 and everyone was losing their minds. And the big scuttlebutt was Elijah Moore. Why can't LaFleur sucks? Why can't he get him in there? Let him play slot, push Garrett to the boundary, and everyone will be happy. So there is some truth to the Lazard talk on that front. We have to have something to complain about, and look at how that went. Elijah Moore just was a petulant dude, and Garrett is the better slot guy than him, hands down. It's not even close. So there is some truth to that, but yeah, I agree. I mean, you kind of would rather have someone else than Lazard.
You just mentioned 11 personnel. It reminded me of something I wanted to ask you. Why is there so much Tyler Conklin hate around the NFL? I mean, literally, NFL.com listed tight end, the Jets tight end room, as one of the top 10 holes on any NFL roster. Meaning the NFL.com gave a list of the top 10 roster holes in the NFL. And number 8 was the Jets holes. Number 8 was the Jets tight end room. I mean, I understand you especially, you were the one who said, don't be surprised in 2023 if they take a tight end, right? And they had Michael Mayer listed pretty high.
Yes.
And this year you kind of thought that they would take Bowers. But
yes,
I think that's a long way from saying like one of the 10 worst roster holes in the NFL.
Yeah, agreed. Maybe that's overdoing it, but let's analyze it. Let's face facts. They don't have a vertical threat guy. It does in that role.
A lot of teams don't.
I'd say half the league at least has a true vertical threat guy who runs, sub 4.59, 4.58, and the Jets guys are 4.65 and above, 4.7.
Conklin is 4.8. Let me check what Ruckert's.
What was Conklin? 4.68?
4.8.
Yeah, that's slow. That's very slow.
Ruckert was 4.76. So
those are very slow numbers for tight ends in the NFL. And I think people fall in love with 40-yard times. So, and the Jets don't have a true vertical threat. They don't. They're more balanced, and
I
that's
mean,
another.
Williams is their biggest, contested catch vertical threat. I mean, because look, in the last 4 seasons, I think he's averaged, except for 2023, but the other 3 seasons, he averaged like 15 yards a catch or something like that. So he's more of a vertical guy in the contested catch realm.
For sure. But in terms of tight end rooms, that's what people are looking at. It's a passing league. It's a vertical, in tight ends, everyone wants that vertical threat guy, the McBride, Kelsey, Kittle. You go down the list. There's a lot of guys, Hawkinson, Laporta, Kincaid. I know he didn't do much. I'm just talking about speed right now. Andrews. So the Jets don't have that. They're balanced guys. Rucker is balanced. He could block. Yeboah, I think, is an underrated blocker. Conklin, he's okay in terms of balance, but yeah, he's a possession receiver. He doesn't have the speed to get down. I like Conklin. Don't get me wrong. I like him. But it's not a great position group. Rucker would have to take a major step forward, and Rodgers is going to put up numbers with Conklin, no question. But it's not, it's not stellar. I'll say that.
I mean, look, the other thing is just about, people kind of ignore the fact that Rodgers, other than when he had Jermichael Finley, he never really had a top tight end ever. Jermichael Finley had a couple of years there where he was really good. Other than that, again, he made Tanyan look better than he was. But you have, Aaron Schatz, formerly Football Outsiders, now on FTN Fantasy, originally suggesting that the Jets should sign Tanyan to fortify their depth at tight end. Now he's suggesting that they sign Jeff Swain, who I believe was the Eagles' backup third tight end, something like that. To me, it's a little much like, I get that it's nothing special there. But, again, Conklin is going to put up his yards underneath. Again, they don't have a Kelsey. They don't have a Mark Andrews. But I think, given just the way their offense is structured, again, would it be better if they had one? Obviously. But to me, I looked at it as kind of like, he's okay. He's middle of the league. Fine.
Yeah, they don't. Well, and the other thing is they have no third tight end. That's proven. Yeboah has never played, really.
That's an issue. But again, when we're talking about roster holes around the NFL, are we usually talking about a team's third tight end when tight end is considered probably one of the least important positions in the league?
Listen, it's very difficult to come up with the worst roster groups in the NFL. That's tough. And because of Rodgers, that's going to come to mind for whoever the writer was. So I don't necessarily agree with that, but this tight end group, Yeboah is a major key, and he's played well this spring. Let's see if he could keep it going. Rucker with his blocking, again, they're going to run the hell out of the ball. I think that's going to be the thing people are not really up to date with right now.
Mm-hmm. Michael Nanny had suggested that you just list the whole Giants roster and call it a day. And I feel like I deserve that shot to the Giants because, again, I covered both teams last year, and the people at Big Blue View were constantly taking shots at the Jets. So I very much feel like on a Jets, stream that I owe some Giants knocks back.
Why would Giant people take shots at the Jets? I don't get it.
They take them all day, by the way, literally all day. I have never heard anyone. That comment from Michael was like the first Giants shot I've heard since joining Jets X Factor over 2 years ago. Big Blue View, it seemed to, literally, it came up in a podcast that had nothing to do with the Jets.
Yeah, I don't get it. It's like the Jets are the little brothers.
Little brother, so you would think you just ignore it. Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, okay. Let's get back to the chat anyway, the topics. Who's the Chiefs' number 4? San Francisco's number 4. Detroit's number 4. Cincy's number 4. The only reason I don't quite...
Number 4?
Meaning their number 4 receiver. The only
receiver.
Reason, meaning compared to Lazard. So the only reason I don't quite buy that argument is because a lot of those teams have better 1, 2, and 3. Not the Chiefs, it happens to be, especially if Rashee Rice ends up suspended. They even with Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, they could still, be in trouble. Certainly last year, people forget that Mahomes really struggled for a lot of the regular season, and part of it was the receiver. But again, if teams have a great 1, 2, and 3, the 4 doesn't matter as much. For the Jets, where you have a great 1 and then a lot of uncertainty, the 4 matters more.
Yeah, Mahomes struggled, a lot of drops, and Reed too. Reed, it's amazing what he does with the concepts he comes up with after the league sort of catches up to him. It's amazing too, because Reed, people old enough to remember, Reed was bullied and bashed. He couldn't win the big one in Philly, and
Never mind that he was in the NFC Championship game in an
uh,
outrageous number of years in a row.
right, right. And McNabb, I don't think McNabb was ever that good, to be honest. I mean, he was
got
solid.
the most. He got the most out of McNabb. Again, McNabb was one of those first of all, he got him to be a pocket passer, which was something that McNabb didn't do early in his career. And I don't think we've seen too many running quarterbacks convert to pocket.
No, and then you take Reed away from McNabb, and he falls apart. Like, it's not even close. Yeah. That's one. Number two, I kind of think about it like this. Reed, he used to get criticized for not running the ball enough, and especially on 3rd and short, passing the ball. He was right place, right time, just lasting and not getting fired until 2008 when the league kind of changed and the rules solidified themselves, and no longer did you have to run the ball to play offense. And I think that it's one of these rare situations where the league caught up to a head coach as opposed to the other way around. And suddenly the NFL was perfect for the way Andy Reid pictured the game. So I love Reid, but he kind of got a little lucky with that.
Speaking of Reid and how good of a coach he was, there was a story about how he when he was fired, a bunch of teams sent planes to bring their team, a private plane or whatever, sent jets to try to get him to come to them. They literally it was 10 teams sent planes to try to get Andy Reid to come to them first.
Yeah,
so I guess the NFL recognized how good Andy Reid was, even if the Eagles didn't.
Yeah, they should have loaded those planes up with fast food and Kentucky Fried Chicken. It would have been good to go.
Yeah, so Robby, if you have to go, I'll let you go. I'm going to continue for a little bit to get through the chat.
You got it.
Okay, well, thank you so much for joining us, and always appreciate your novel takes on the Jets and on the NFL.
Yeah, right. Later, guys. Bye, Rivka.
Take care. Okay, guys. So now it's just me. I'll get through some of the chat. So it says in Green Bay, Lazard had a good nose for the end zone playing with Rodgers. Let's hope he can get back to making those types of plays. So the thing is, the red zone back shoulder plays. If Mike Williams is healthy, Mike Williams will be taking those plays. I mean, theoretically, they could put Williams and Lazard on the field at the same time and, kind of just read the coverage. But that's really Williams' spot on the team, which is one of the reasons why I predicted that Williams will score 8 touchdowns this year. The other thing is just between Williams and Lazard, one guy catches the ball all the time and the other one drops it half the time. So even though he caught all those touchdowns, I'm like, if you're Rodgers, who do you rather throw it to? Williams, who catches everything, or Lazard, who is just as likely to bobble and drop a perfect throw as he is to catch it? And again, I know he had his big touchdowns. He had scored something like 17 touchdowns in 2 years, 3 years, something like that, or 17 red zone touchdowns in 3 seasons. So again, I totally understand that, but I do think Mike Williams will be that guy if he's healthy. And as far as a third down target, that's the last time you want to throw the ball to a guy who can't catch. Garrett is going to be the third down guy. If Gibson is the slot guy, then he'll be the third down guy. Conklin, Brees, they'll be more the third down. Let's see. Greg, I appreciate it about hitting the like button always. I'd love Watson McGregor to beat out Clemens. I agree, Rob. I'm just so sick of Clemens. I'm sick of his bad boy persona and how people eat it up when he's a mediocre player at best. But I think that, Ulbrich made a comment about Clemens this offseason. I just think that, I could see Watson McGregor making it with Clemens. I don't think, if they choose to keep 6 defensive, edge rushers, but I don't think they'll both beat him out. Let's see. McNabb needs some beef on him to help him be a run stopper, but don't want him to lose his quickness either. Yes and no, because look, Hassan Reddick is 6'1", 240. He's still 240, and yet the Jets trust him to be a starter. So it might be with McDonald more just learning technique than, because Blewett pointed out in his review, I don't know if you watched Blewett's review of McDonald, but Blewett pointed out that McDonald has more power to him than you'd think for a guy who's he came into the league at 239. So, again, you never know with that one. I'm wondering if the Jets see McDonald as the authentic replacement to Reddick, and that's why they don't want to give Reddick a bigger contract. Gotta love the variety of Jets content pages. Thanks. Let's see. Let's see. Laz and Conk combined for a G easily, not separating totals, combined 1,000 plus. I got 5 on it. I don't think so. I don't think they're going to get enough. Michael Nanny also wrote an article talking about the possibility that Kaplan will actually have fewer yards than last year. I think he had 621 last year. He could end up more in the 400 to 500 range because, again, the Jets have other targets to go to. And if Conklin ends up under 500, I don't see any way that Lazard ends up with more than 500. But again, injury-wise, if Williams is injured, that's always a possibility. Let's see. Have you heard anything about UDFA Jarius Monroe from Tulane? We need safety help. I like him as a prospect. I haven't heard anything. If Robby was here, maybe he would have said something. I don't think anyone really said anything about him, any of the beat writers during, mini camp or during OTAs. You heard a little bit about Jalen Key. You heard about JBC. You heard about Isaiah Oliver. I think Monroe is one of those guys who's just going to be on the outside looking in. Hope this DT is off on San Francisco. So the truth is, I'm actually very concerned about the San Francisco game because Shanahan shifted over the last couple of seasons to a gap scheme, and the gap scheme is exactly what usually kills this Jets defense because all they have to, the Jets are they penetrate. They like to, one gap, and the gap scheme is designed to punish that. You just let the guys penetrate and you run right behind them. And so I'd be very concerned. The other thing is, again, the Jets like to play with pressure, but Purdy likes to get rid of the ball quickly a lot of the time. And so, again, I think San Francisco is a bad matchup for them. I'm worried about not just losing, but getting blown out, even with Rodgers. Let's see. I can't talk about our defense. Top 3 that stayed solid was shuffling. It's June. The D is solid, if not stronger than 23. I'm making barbecue chicken wings. Okay, so it's true. And to a certain extent, you want to say, look, this defense deserves the benefit of the doubt. They've been top 5 the last 2 seasons. They were great despite, a historically atrocious offense. But ultimately, it is worth noting that there are questions about their defense. As Joe Blewett pointed out, Lecky Fotu is, objectively speaking, a worse run stuffer than Al Woods was. He's much more movable. You could see it. Now, if Robbie's right and they kind of see the big body who can also penetrate, maybe they do gap and a half stuff. They don't necessarily play him at zero tech. But they shift their scheme a bit. Maybe they can get a gem in Fotu. But overall, there are still concerns. Defensive tackle is definitely concerned. Edge rusher depth. I mean, if JJ, Reddick, or McDonald get hurt, they really don't have anyone to replace any of those guys. And then again, Mosley's getting a year older. Safety, again, okay, fine. You want to say we're not worrying about linebacker, fine, but safety is also a concern. Is Chuck Clark coming off injury? As Robby was saying, if they're putting Adams kind of as a strong safety role, how's Clark going to do as a single high? The defense definitely has questions. Now, look, do I think that it's actually going to come to fruition that their defense has issues? I don't. I think their defense will be very solid. If it's not top 5, it'll be top 8. And I don't think it'll matter as much because I think their offense will do more to help them. Again, they drafted Will McDonald largely because they thought they would have leads and then they could just deploy McDonald to be that pass rush wrecker. And now that's what they're hoping from him this year. And if McDonald does get more play in that role, it might not even matter. A lot of, the run defense stuff. Robby was saying he's worried about the run D up the middle. But again, if you have leads and the opponent is forced to throw the ball, then you don't have to worry about that, which was what San Francisco did last year. Some of their raw run defense numbers weren't that great, but it just didn't matter because they were blowing teams out all the time. So, look, I think it's, again, I asked questions about defense because I do see the potential for concerns. Offense is obviously the bigger concern because that's where the injuries are, and that's where the putridness happened last year. But I think it's fair to ask questions about the defense, particularly because they lost several really big pieces. Okay. Hey, I love Rivka. Thanks so much. I appreciate that. She knows football. Appreciate that. I appreciate that, guys. Let's see. Okay. Mike Williams won't be Mike Williams until midseason. I don't know about that. Brees, seemed to get around into form before midseason. It's possible that he'll be back earlier. Again, he also got injured a month before, week 3 as opposed to week 7. I think it'll take him 5-6 weeks. I don't necessarily think it'll be midseason. Mike never been a burner or great route runner. He's got big hands and he catches contested balls at a high rate. He can do that at 80% speed. You'd think that, but even a guy like DeAndre Hopkins really again, his raw numbers last year were still pretty good because Will Levis was chucking up to him all the time. But his efficiency has really, really, really dropped off in the last couple of years. And Hopkins is not the exact same kind of guy, but again, a guy who he would win more with route running, maybe a little bit more Devontae Adams-like than Williams. But again, a contested catch guy, and a lot of his contested catches fell off this past year. And, so you would think that a guy who's not relying on speed would be fine. But I think that the vertical leap is very much tied to the ACL. The ability to jump. And so, I'm more concerned about that than I might have otherwise been. Obviously, you'd think, he's not a speed guy. It doesn't matter. I think it does matter. I'd love to like them to check in on Russell Gage as an extra vet receiver with the absence of Williams through camp. I think Russell Gage is a slot guy, if I'm not much mistaken. Let me check this out. I'm pretty sure he's primarily a slot guy. Russell Gage. Receiving. Let's check his career. 55.3% slot. So, he was only at 35.6% in 2022, but his most productive seasons came out of the slot, came when he was in the slot the most. Again, if they're happy with Gibson, I don't see any reason to sign Gage. Again, if they want Gibson and Corley to duke it out, Garrett in the slot, they don't really need another slot receiver. Well, ideally, if there was someone available, they could get another big body outside and not have to use Lazard, but that just wasn't realistic. Rivka, you should get Jack Green frames for your glasses. Yeah, I like my glasses the way they are, thanks. But I appreciate the thought. Let's see. Oh, so you're talking about speed-wise in terms of him being a deep threat. So the thing is, it's not just that he's so short. It's like Mecole Hardman. Hardman was an occasional deep threat, but how Mecole Hardman would alligator arm things because, again, he was afraid over the middle. And part of it was he had these little stubby arms. So Gibson's, let me see. Xavier Gibson arm. 30 1/8 inches. Hold on one second. I have to check what that is. I'm pretty sure 30 1/8 inches is among the shortest you'll ever see for a receiver. And so when you think of a deep ball, you think to a certain extent of having obviously if you get past the guy, but we never really saw much signs that he can stack receivers. I see him more of a short game kind of guy. If anything, I see Corley as more the type, even though he's not a burner as much, he was able to stack a little bit better. Let's see. Evening, everyone. I think Douglas should have drafted another receiver like Javon Baker, or at least be talking to the Steelers for Deontay Johnson. Panthers got that guy for next to nothing. I 100% agree. I thought the Jets should have been on Deontay Johnson. The only thing is if they had gone Deontay Johnson, they probably wouldn't have Mike Williams. I'm not sure which one. I'd rather Johnson still, but not by as much as you'd think. As far as Javon Baker, I was a big Javon Baker gal pre-draft. I think the Patriots took him one slot before the Jets pick in that round. I was very big pre-draft that I wanted the Jets to double up on receiver. There were some receivers available even in the 6th, 7th round who I would have been very happy drafting. Look, they chose not to do it. We'll see what the receiving core looks like. Let's see. The closer to the season we get, the more I like the double dip at running back in the draft. Look, if they end up really running the ball as much as they seem to be showing, it makes sense to take the two guys. And again, I happen to like both running backs a lot. I actually like Davis better than Allen, just because I wrote an article about this because I tend to like the guys who take the yards that are given to them rather than the guy who's boom or bust, 1 yard, he rips a 25-yard run, and the next one he's being dropped for a loss of 4. I like both guys, though. I think that they have a lot of talent. I just, again, would have preferred to take a receiver at that spot. I think there were more good receivers available, but I can definitely hear it. I'm not killing them for it. Let's see. Yeboah is the vertical threat guy in the room. Let's see. Yeboah 40-yard dash. I'm not sure if they even have it because he came out 4.75. He's not any faster than the other two Jets receivers. Let's see. But we got an extra third for next year, which definitely helps. We can always come across another decent receiver when we need to. Yeah. You could get another one. We don't even know what Rucker can do. It had horrific quarterback play. True, and Rucker did show that he has a very good rocker step. He actually does it quicker than Tyler Conklin. And so there is that potential. We just, again, you just haven't seen it. And as far as his blocking, it's much more spotty than Jet fans recognize. I mean, he'll make one great block and then two horrible ones. He'll get shoved over. Kind of needs a little bit more weight, actually. And so, I don't know how much Rucker going to use Rucker in the receiving game. Now, Kuntz should be the vertical guy. Yeah, Kuntz has the speed, but he can't catch. Go watch it. Go watch Blewett's review of him from college. Guy can't catch. So are we keeping our fullback? I mean, I would prefer for them not to, but I think they will, just because Nathaniel Hackett has carried a fullback wherever he's been. And I think the Jets' plan last year was to run more with the I formation or whatever, or offset I. And then obviously Rodgers got hurt and that all went down the tubes, but I think they will keep the fullback. So, Rivka, have you watched the Jets' 51-46 comeback versus the Fins in 86 yet? I enjoy your work daily, but pre-2000 comeback wins were far from boring, respectively, fully, of course. I have to say, first of all, I don't even know if I wrote that or if Michael edited that in. I don't remember if I wrote that they're boring. I think I just wrote that I just didn't want to touch them. And you'll see, I have an article coming out in a couple of days where I reference that comeback. So it's not that they were boring. It's just more that it was harder for me to find out, because if I went back to old ones, then I'd have to start going back to ones from the 60s and 70s. And those, to be honest, I don't know much about. And so I decided to just go from 2000 because it was easier for me. They're boring to younger fans too. That's the truth. There are a lot of Jet fans who kind of came in the Rex era and don't necessarily want to see from before. But honestly, the main reason I didn't do it is just because it was easier for me not to look at the pre-2000. Yes, I have watched. I mean, I haven't watched the whole game, but I've certainly watched the highlights of that. The Wesley Walker 3 touchdowns. Yeah. Let's see. Again, Lazard is going to play some. We have Brownlee 2. Besides the first made 4, Earthchilds plays special teams. Imagine he could play receiver as well if needed. I think we're okay to start. So the truth is, Brownlee showed absolutely nothing besides that one, one-handed catch in camp. I mean, he showed nothing as a route runner. He showed nothing as a receiver. He catches everything with his chest. Earthchilds is not a receiver. I mean, you might as well count him as not a receiver. I mean, he's there to play special teams. That's why he made the team. He's kind of like Brownlee, Hardy, who was technically a cornerback. I mean, I think they used Charles a couple of times offensively this year, but I wouldn't even think of him that way. Lazard, my question is, again, if he's truly their fourth receiver or fifth receiver, I don't really care about him. It's if the second or third and he becomes a starter that I'm most concerned. Yeah, you said Kuntz 4.55. Again, yeah, that's great, but he can't do anything else. Show me that you can catch first. Football in the 70s was probably the most brutal. What's your take? I mean, certainly the way the Jets played in the 70s. But I think the 2010s to 2020s has been pretty miserable too. Hey, Rivka, it's Connor. What do you think we could expect out of McDonald if he was to break out? I think a breakout for McDonald is 8 to 10 sacks. So I just don't know if he's going to get enough snaps to get that 8 to 10 sacks. But my prediction for him is, I don't remember if I predicted 6 or 7. I think I predicted 7. That's where I see him. Yes, I would agree. I guess I was being a little conservative with McDonald. I could definitely see him getting 8 to 10 sacks because he's more of a finisher than Huff is, and Huff got 10 sacks last year. McDonald has longer arms. Again, he has more of that ability to strip the ball, which again counts as a sack. I definitely think that a breakout for him could be 8 to 10 sacks. I do agree with that. I think he'll end up more like 6 or 7, but I could definitely see that. I'm very high on McDonald. I've said before, again, ever since they traded JFM, I guess I see a little bit more what McDonald's role is going to be. I was not very happy when they traded for Reddick and they had JFM, and then I was like, what are you doing, Will McDonald? But I like McDonald as a player. I still wish they had taken a receiver at that spot. But if McDonald becomes a dominant, sack game record type guy, I don't think anyone will care. Hey, Harlan, nice to see you. Let's see. Did we finish? Did I finish all the chats of everything in the chat over here? Okay. I think this stream is going to be shorter than usual unless anyone wants to get anything into the chat. Because I think I discussed most of the things I wanted to with Robby. Let's see. Do we have anything else over here? Yeah, actually, the only thing I didn't discuss with Robby was expectations from McDonald in year 2. I was curious to hear his take on that. because I said I have pretty high expectations for McDonald. Again, I think he's a good player. I think I can understand why the Jets liked him. He's their bendiest edge rusher that they've ever had, possibly. Or certainly has the high fly, potential. Okay, so Connor asked, do you think we can get 700 yards out of Conklin? So I'll tell you, I predicted, I think in the 500s. Michael had written even in the 400s. I think with Conklin, it's not so much the yardage as it is the efficiency. One thing about Conklin is a lot of the yards that he's eaten up over the last couple of seasons have been dump offs in the flat on 3rd and 20. By the way, Jetted Out, I see you have a question about the cap. You can ask your question. In terms of getting I don't see Conklin getting 700 yards. I don't think Rodgers throws the tight ends often enough, but I do think we'll see Conklin more as an intermediate threat rather than just a short, dump off guy. I think you'll see his first downs go up. I think you'll see a few touchdowns to him, which he didn't have any last year. I think if Rodgers stays healthy, we will see people will be more impressed with Conklin, even if the numbers aren't as great. Okay. You have the cap question. Jetted Out, you have your question? Because I can't say I'm a cap expert, but that's I think of the people on Genetics, I don't think I'm being overly arrogant to say I'm probably best with the cap. So let's see. Can incentive deals put you over the cap? Tyron only on the books for $6 million, and I'm thinking Reddick will get an incentive. So let me explain to you how incentive works. How incentives work. I wrote an article about this. I think it was earlier in the offseason. There's two types of incentives. There's what's called likely to be earned, LTBE, likely to be earned, and then there's NLTBE, which is not likely to be earned. Basically, a likely to be earned incentive means that whatever that incentive goal is, the player actually did it last year. Meaning, for example, if the incentive is that the player should have 600 rushing yards and they had 600 rushing yards last year, then that's called a likely to be earned incentive. If it's 600 yards and they didn't have a 600 rushing yards last year, that's called a not likely to be earned incentive. The difference is that a likely to be earned incentive counts against the salary cap and a not likely to be earned incentive doesn't. So what that means, for example, they have with Tyron Smith, his first incentive is something like that he'll play 25% of the snaps. He played 25% of the snaps last year. So that incentive counts towards the salary cap. Then there's one that if he plays 75% of the snaps, he did not play 75% of the snaps last year. So that incentive, whatever is like 1.25 million, that one doesn't count against the salary cap. So, and just so you understand, then what happens is at the end of the season, let's say the player earned the incentive and it was a likely to be earned incentive, then everything just stays. But let's say that it was a likely to be earned incentive and then they didn't earn it. The team gets credited for the next season. They get credit for that amount of the salary cap because they were charged too much on the previous season. So for the next season, they get sort of a credit towards the next seasons. Then a not likely to be earned incentive if the player hits it. So again, it didn't count towards that season. So for example, let's say Dalvin Cook had rushed for 1,000 yards in 2023. It was a not likely to be earned incentive or whatever it was. I don't think it was 1,000 yards. I think it was 1,250 because that's what he didn't do. Let's say he had run for 1,250 yards last year. You wish. Then the Jets would have been debited this year that the amount of the incentive because they got away with it last year. So again, when we're talking about incentive deals putting you over the cap, it depends if they're likely to be earned or not likely to be earned. Let's check. Let me just check quickly how much over the cap has the Jets cap space right now. They have right now that the Jets have 6.2 million. So they can add. They have 6.2 million. They're probably going to sign another guy or two for depth at some point. Tyron is not only on the books for 6 million. He actually counts 12.25 towards the cap because 6.25 million of his incentives are likely to be earned, and another 6 are not likely to be earned. So actually, his cap charge, I believe, is 12.25 million. When you have, I think Mike Williams is on the books for less because he's on the books for 10. I think most of his incentives are not likely to be earned because he only played 3 games last season. So when you're talking about Tyron, if you give him, I think I mentioned this in an article I wrote. If you give him incentives that he hit last year, those are going to count against the cap. But for example, let's say you give Tyron an incentive that he gets 12 sacks because he didn't get 12 last year. He only got 11. That would be a not likely to be earned incentive, which means it would count against this year's cap. Now, if Reddick ends up getting 12 sacks, so much the better. It's great. It helps the Jets. And then it counts towards next year's cap, and they'll worry about it next year. If he doesn't get it, then it's just nothing happens. So they can put in that's why I said they're going to put it. If they give him incentives, it will probably be not likely to be earned. Meaning, for example, let's say he makes an all-pro team. That's a common incentive that they put in players' contracts. He wasn't an All-Pro last year, and so if he makes the All-Pro, he gets an incentive. If he makes a Pro Bowl, I don't think he made the Pro Bowl last year. I can check that up quickly. Let's check. He made the Pro Bowl last year. I don't think he did. Yeah, he did. Okay, so Pro Bowl would be likely to be an incentive. So that's why I said All-Pro. So I think they'll give him a couple million incentives. Maybe they'll guarantee a little bit more money, or they'll give him a little bit more to his contract. I'm really not concerned that he's going to start, missing a bunch of training camp. Maybe I'm wrong. I've been wrong before. I said the Jets weren't going to have a safety competition, and then Robert Saleh announced first day of OTAs that they're having a safety competition, even though it seems pretty fake to me. Looks like Adams and Clark are your starters, but Saleh announced it. So I've been wrong before, but that's just a little bit about how incentives work. If you have any follow-up questions, you can for sure ask them. John, you said Connie would be a good guest. Absolutely. I'm not very connected on things. I'm not really active on Twitter. So I don't have all these ability to reach out to a bunch of people. But yeah, definitely should be a great guest. Connor, you said, can you list your receiver depth chart from 1 to 6? The way I see it right now is, I have a hard time saying it because, again, it depends. They're going to have sort of two different 11 personnel formations. You're going to have the ones where you have Garrett, so you have Garrett. Garrett's obviously their number 1 receiver. Mike Williams is their number 2. The question about who's 3 or 4 depends on how they're deploying their offense. Are they putting Garrett in the slot? Or are they putting him outside? If he's outside, you're going to have Garrett at the X, Williams at the Z, and then you're going to have, it sounds like Gibson at the slot right now. Even though I'm going to assume that within 5-6 weeks of the season, that'll be Corley. But for now, it sounds like it's Gibson. So then Gibson would technically be your number 3. If they put Garrett in the slot, it'll probably be Williams and Williams at the X and Lazard at the Z. So that would be Garrett, Williams, Lazard. And so I'm not really talking so much about 1 to 6. Technically, if you want to put it 11 personnel as your traditional X, Y, and slot, you have Garrett 1, Williams 2, Gibson 3, Lazard 4 well, not really, because I guess Lazard 4 because he's kind of Williams' backup. Corley 5 sort of as Garrett's backup / the slot backup. And then Brownlee 6, and then Irv Charles, who doesn't really count. I still think they're probably going to carry 7, even though I think I dropped Jason Brownlee from my last prediction because I, by mistake, forgot to include Thomas Hennessy. But I still lean towards them keeping 7 receivers, at least until Williams, is fully healthy. Again, to have that another big body, not that Brownlee brings anything as a big body. But that's my answer, Connor. Let's see. Kuntz in his 18 games at Old Dominion had 85 receptions for 836 yards and 7 touchdowns. I can't find what his target count was, though. So it's more than just his target count. It's more, if you watch his film, didn't really show any route running, didn't really show any ability to catch the ball unless it's again, he didn't really show much. There's a reason that he was a 7th-round pick with a RAS score of 10. That doesn't happen that often. And so, again, if you see a guy with that high of a RAS and he's a 7th-round pick, that there's probably tremendous deficiencies in other areas. I kind of felt the same about Gibson a little bit. I was like, he ran a 4.42. Not that 4.42 is blinding speed, but 4.42 is still pretty reasonably fast. And, he's a kind of shifty guy. The fact that he was a UDFA told you he was very, very raw in other areas with 4.42 speed. And so that's really the reality about Kuntz. I don't think he's going to make the roster, even though I think I put him in my first version of the 40-man. Or of 53-man, sorry, but I don't think Kuntz is going to make it. You said Joe Douglas did a heck of a job. Yeah, the thing is Douglas. So he did a great job, coupled with the fact that Tyron Smith and Mike Williams are coming, injuries, and obviously did not have the markets that they were hoping for. When I heard Williams was cut, I thought he was getting at least $25 million a year. And so in that sense, yes, Douglas did structure those deals well with the incentives. Assuming, I think those players to an extent bet on themselves that they're going to be able to play and earn the incentives. Let's see. Who are the backup linebackers this year? Do we expect to see anyone jumping out of the blue from the UDFAs? No. To me, the way their linebacker core, I don't even know if they're going to keep all these guys, but I think the linebacker core is pretty clear. in terms of who are possibly could make the roster. It's obviously Quincy and Mosley. Sherwood is the base linebacker. If you watched Lewis' review of Sherwood, he was more impressed with Sherwood than I was, to be honest. I thought Sherwood had some deficiencies in coverage, but again, the Jets only gave him like 40 covers. He really didn't play a lot of coverage snaps all season. But Sherwood is their base 4-3 linebacker. And then they like Zaire Barnes. I think Zaire Barnes is going to make the roster again. I think they see him as a Quincy developmental type. And then I think Chaz Surratt will make it for special teams. Maybe they only carry 4 linebackers. I think if I recall correctly, they only had 4 linebackers for much of the 2022 season. But I think in my most recent iteration, I had both those guys making the roster. Zaire Barnes just really, one of those really raw, athletic, but could become a sideline to sideline linebacker. Probably Ulbrich and Sala probably see him as developmental. Do you think we're capable of getting Justin Simmons? Well, with $6.2 million of salary cap space, the short answer to that question is no. The long answer to that is, are they capable? Yes. Are they going to do it? Very unlikely. Joe Douglas never pays safeties, and so I guess if they could get him for $2 million, maybe, but they don't. They just don't seem to care. Jake Asman would have her contact info. I should probably ask. Connor, anytime. Do you have your YouTube? I like your studies on Jets info. So my primary channel is really here. I post on Jets X Factor. I do have a YouTube channel that I had started because I started my podcast before there were some issues getting it just getting it going. So I had posted a few episodes of my podcast on my YouTube channel, which is just in my name. But I don't really post anything on there. If I do end up posting more videos, it would be on the Jet X channel. Okay. Instead of 7 receivers, could the Jets go with an extra tight end? I mean, theoretically, if they like Kuntz better than Brownlee, they could, or they could sign someone, I guess, also. But I think they're going to go. I don't see either one of these. 17-game season is taking its toll. The NFL should allow teams to activate the full 53 on game day. Well, Goodell was talking about going to 18 games, which I think is inevitable in the next CBA. I think when they there will be more changes about roster sizes because at that point I think the NFLPA won't allow it without it. So I'm assuming then they'll start allowing bigger rosters, more players active on game day, things like that. But for now, I mean, I agree. I think there's no reason why it should be. I don't know about full 53, but I see no reason why it should be. They should have this differentiation. Like if a guy's active, he should be able to be active for game day. That's my take on that. Is the podcast on TuneIn Radio? It should be because once it went to Spotify and Apple Music, and once it went there, it should be on TuneIn. If it's not, it should be there soon, but you can probably check for it. Make sure you spell Boord Boord, not Board. Okay, Rivka, what's going on with the special teams and the return game? Have they put together a plan, and who are those return men that they are focusing on? I don't think they know who's going to be a return man yet. I think that they have a very open competition. Again, they gave Gibson the first crack at it because he did it last year. They signed Tariq Cohen. They signed Jakeem Grant. They have a few UDFAs, Brandon Codrickton, Tyler Harrell, who ran a 4.29 at his pro day. There were a few other guys. Honestly, I think in my most recent 53-man, I had either Cohen or Grant making it as the return man. But I think they've put Corley back there. Also, ultimately, I'll tell you what it is. I was very disappointed in Xavier Gibson last year as a return man because I think he had like 4 punt returns for touchdowns in college. So I really thought when he returned that punt for a touchdown in week 1, I thought it was just a harbinger of things to come. I really, really believed that he was going to be a great punt returner. And then he did nothing the rest of the season except fumble. Now, he was never a great kick returner, which is interesting because usually you think that returning a punt is harder than returning a kick. But, I think just because of his fumbling, I don't know if Gibson is going to be the choice. But then again, like people said Corley, guys who are not used to fielding kicks and punts tend to have a hard time doing it at the NFL level. I've seen on other teams, people always think, you put your most dynamic athlete back there. If they haven't done it before, especially punts, but kickoffs too, they have a hard time judging them. They have a hard time catching them. And so I don't know who's going to end up the returner. I understand why they're trying to give Cohen and Grant a chance, but they need to find someone dynamic there because the kickoffs in particular are just going to be, again, with the rules, they can't fall behind the 8 ball there. I don't think they know who their guy is going to be yet. One underrated thing to look out for is that Justin Hardy was a very good blocker on returns, and they don't have him anymore. Could make a difference. It's just something to think about. Okay, so I guess I'll give you guys a couple, I'll give you 30 seconds to post any more comments. If not, I'm going to say goodnight. This has been fun. Thanks so much, guys, for joining. Maybe I'll go live more often if you ask me to. Put in the comments now or after the stream. I got a lot of critical comments on YouTube. I don't always see them. So if you actually enjoy the content, please like, share, and subscribe. And if you ask for more, maybe I'll actually get to do a little bit more often, especially in the summer. Things are a little bit quieter. Okay. Thank you very much, guys. Again, please remember, like, share, subscribe, check out jetsxfactor.com. Again, I write for Jets X Factor, so I'm obviously biased, but I really do think that overall the content we give you is better than any other Jets content you'll find on the internet, just in terms of the depth, particularly Michael Nania analytics, Joe Bullitt film reviews. We have Andrew Fialco joined with film reviews. Robby Sabo is bringing more film. He's back at JetX, more full time, and so you're really getting film reviews that you won't go and get anywhere else. Okay, thank you guys. Have a great night. Take care.